Your golden sister deserves the inheritance, my father said, swirling his drink like a judge preparing a sentence. You've never been good enough, Emily. Hi everyone, my name is Emily Ward, I'm 28, and that night was the first time I realized my father didn't just underestimate me, he erased me. He leaned closer, his voice low and venomous. You were always the weak link in this family. I just nodded, because arguing with him was pointless. My mother sat quietly beside him, pretending to adjust her pearls, pretending not to hear. My sister, Claire, smiled faintly, as if my humiliation was dessert. Be grateful, Dad said. You have a roof over your head. That's more than you've earned. I bit back a smile. If only they knew. Because while they fought over houses, jewelry, and old trust funds, I'd been building something invisible, something far more valuable. For 6 years, I developed the intellectual property behind the family's tech division, the patents that powered every deal my father bragged about at his dinner parties. And those patents? Every last one was under my name. Not Claire's. Not my father's. Mine. So when he told me I was the weak link, I almost laughed. Because what he didn't realize was simple. He could take the mansion, the cars, and the inheritance. But I already owned the foundation beneath his entire empire. And soon he'd find out exactly what that meant. My father loved power the way most people love oxygen. He couldn't breathe without it. Ward Innovations wasn't just his company. It was his identity. Every award, every handshake, every headline fed his ego like fuel. And my sister Claire? She was the mirror he used to admire himself. Charming, photogenic, obedient. I was the opposite. The quiet one. The one who spent nights in the lab instead of cocktail parties. Dad called me the tinkerer. He said it like an insult. But the truth was, the tinkering had built the company's future, the biometric interface technology that made our firm a leader in secure medical data. I'd spent years perfecting it, and when it came time to file the patents, Dad told me to put them under the company name. I didn't. I filed them under mine. Quietly. Legally. Permanently. When the lawyer called to confirm, I remember him asking, Miss Ward, are you sure you don't want to list your father's corporation as a co-owner? I'm very sure, I'd said. This is my work. He'd hesitated. You understand what this means, right? Oh, I smiled. I understand perfectly. Because the moment Dad decided I was unworthy of the family name, I decided the family empire would one day belong to me. And that day was getting closer than anyone realized. 2 weeks later, my father summoned me to the family estate like a CEO calling a failed intern. Be here by 7, he'd said curtly. We have business to finalize before the legal transition. The legal transition, that's what he called handing everything to Claire. When I arrived, the atmosphere was sharp enough to cut glass. My mother was setting the table, overly polite as always, and Claire was seated beside my father, glowing with triumph in her gold silk dress. Dad didn't even look up. Sit, Emily. This won't take long. He pushed a folder toward me. The inheritance documents. Sign this, and we'll ensure you get a small settlement for your cooperation. I opened the folder. The words intellectual property transfer stared back at me in bold print. He wanted my patents. He wanted my life's work. Claire smirked. Come on, Em. It's just business. You'll be comfortable. I looked between them. My father's arrogance, my mother's silence, my sister's entitlement. Then I closed the folder slowly. No, I said quietly. Dad's expression darkened. Excuse me? I said no. And before he threatened to cut me off, you might want to check who legally owns the very tech you're trying to sell. He froze, confusion flashing in his eyes. That was the first time I saw fear in him. And it was beautiful. You can't possibly mean that, my father said, his voice trembling with barely controlled rage. Those patents belong to the company. No, I replied evenly, sliding the folder back toward him. They belong to the person who created them, and that's me. Claire scoffed. You worked for Dad's company. Anything you did was under his direction. I smiled. That's where you're wrong. I never signed the intellectual property clause. You remember, Dad? You told me to handle the paperwork myself because you were too busy golfing with investors. My father blinked. The realization dawned on him that his arrogance had built my escape route. You don't understand how business works, he said coldly. You're a child playing with fire. Then maybe it's time you got burned. I reached into my bag and pulled out a second envelope, my official resignation letter, and a notice to cease all use of my proprietary designs under Ward Innovations. Claire's mouth fell open. You wouldn't dare. Oh, I would. My father lunged for the documents, but I held them just out of reach. You once told me I'd never be good enough. But now your empire runs on technology, one own. Without my signature, your entire infrastructure collapses. He froze. And for the first time in my life, my father, the man who'd built empires, had nothing left to say. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. My father's jaw tightened, his pride wrestling with panic. You're bluffing, he said finally. Our legal team would've caught it. I interrupted softly. They didn't. I used an external counsel. The patents were registered through an independent entity, not Ward Innovations. You can check the U.S. Intellectual Property Database if you'd like. It's all public record. Claire's smugness faltered. My mother set down her wine glass, her hand trembling slightly. You'd ruin your own family, she whispered. I'm not ruining anything, I said. I'm reclaiming what's mine. Dad's face turned red. Do you have any idea what this means for the company? Oh, I do. It means every investor, every partner, every contract tied to my tech, they now answer to me. I took out my phone and tapped the screen. In fact, they already know. A notification blinked across his tablet. He snatched it up, eyes widening as he read the press release. Founder's daughter, Emily Ward, announces withdrawal of patented tech from Ward Innovations. Emily, you've destroyed everything, he shouted. No, I said, standing. You destroyed everything when you decided power mattered more than people. As I walked toward the door, Claire's voice cracked behind me. So, what happens now? I turned back, calm and cold. Now, I said, the weak link becomes the chain. By morning, chaos had erupted. My phone buzzed nonstop. Reporters, shareholders, even lawyers from my father's company. Ward Innovation stock had dropped 12% overnight. I sat by the window of my apartment, sipping coffee, watching the sunrise with quiet satisfaction. Dad had called 8 times. Claire, 5. Mom once, to say I'd gone too far. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I called my attorney, Miles. Everything's filed and protected? I asked. Every last patent, he said. They can't use a single piece of your tech without your written consent. Good, I murmured. Now, let's talk about licensing. Miles hesitated. You're still going to work with them? Not exactly. I'll offer them the same deal they offered me, a small settlement for limited access. He laughed softly. Poetic. By noon, the company's legal team reached out for an urgent meeting. My father sounded desperate on the call. Emily, let's discuss this privately, as family. Family? I repeated. Funny how you only remember that word when you're losing. Claire chimed in, her tone brittle. Dad made mistakes, but this isn't how we fix them. I'm not fixing anything, I said. I'm teaching you what happens when you underestimate someone who built the foundation you stand on. That night, I sent them an email. Subject line. Licensing terms, weak link clause. It was time to make them pay, legally, quietly, completely. The meeting took place in the glass conference room of Ward Innovations, the same room where my father once refused to let me sit at the table. Now, the nameplate read, Emily Ward, founder, EW Technologies. He didn't even look at me when I walked in, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. Claire sat beside him, pale and silent. My mother clutched her handbag like it might save her from drowning. Let's make this simple, I began, sliding the licensing contract across the table. If you want to continue using my intellectual property, you'll pay annual royalties at market value, 20% of all net profits. My father's jaw flexed. That's blackmail. No, I said evenly. It's business, the kind you taught me. Claire leaned forward. Emily, please can't we work together? I looked her in the eye. You made it clear who was family and who wasn't. I'm just honoring your definition. Dad's voice broke through the silence. You're destroying everything we built. I smiled.
No, Dad.
I'm preserving what I built and saving your company from legal collapse in the process. He stared at the paper, defeated. Then slowly he signed. I gathered the documents, calm and composed. Thank you. The royalties will be deposited quarterly. Try not to miss a payment. As I turned to leave, the board members stood to shake my hand. For the first time ever, they saw me not as his daughter, but as his equal. Weeks later, the world had adjusted. Ward Innovations operated under my licensing terms. Every product, every press release, every investor briefing carried a small but powerful credit line. Technology licensed under EW Technologies. My father couldn't escape my name if he tried. Claire kept her distance now. When we crossed paths at charity galas, she smiled too brightly, spoke too softly, terrified of saying the wrong thing. My mother still called sometimes, her tone sugar-coated, asking when I'd come home for dinner. Home. That word had never sounded emptier. I had my own office, now overlooking the same skyline my father once dominated. The press called me the silent architect of the Ward legacy, the genius who turned her family's rejection into a multi-million-dollar empire. But to me, it was never about fame or money. It was about balance. I visited the old family estate one evening. The gates opened automatically. My system still ran the security. Inside, I found my father standing on the porch, older somehow, smaller. You won, he said quietly. No, I replied, staring at him through the fading light. I just stopped losing. He nodded once, eyes dropping to the ground. No apology, but no denial either. As I walked away, the air felt lighter. They had stripped me of recognition, inheritance, and love. But in the end, I took everything they valued most.